listening to the Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast, a podcast in sisterhood for female entrepreneurs that serves up savvy, actionable marketing advice and interviews with creative business owners who are in the trenches, building their businesses as we speak. The Marketing and Yoga Pants community is for you, the girl on her couch, in her yoga pants, top knot tight, hunched over her MacBook, trying her hardest to get the word out about her business. So in the name of supporting each other while supporting ourselves, bringing community, sound marketing advice, coffee, chocolate, and wine together for you, yoga pants wearing business owner, in a world where followers mean nothing, but paying customers mean the world, join us on this week's podcast episode and in our private Facebook group where you'll meet your soul sisters and build your business in yoga pants. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast. I'm Brit and I'm here today with Lauree Ostrofsky, who is a speaker, author, coach, and hugger at simplyleap.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lauree.
Oh, Brit, I'm so psyched to be here.
I am so psyched you're here. You guys, you got to know how Lauree and I have been able to connect. So first of all, I heard about Lauree for the first time probably about a month ago when I heard her interview on the Courage and Clarity podcast with Steph Crowder. You guys know I'm a huge fan of that podcast and a huge fan of Steph. And it was one of those podcast episodes where it just hit me hard. I mean, everything that Lauree went through, her story and everything she stands for. And you guys know I listen to so many podcasts and this one really moved me. I was just every word. I think I even, rewinded it a couple times just to hear her say what she had to say again. And then, as I mentioned, Lauree is an author and she has 2 books, and her most recent book really struck me. I thought, I need that thing. And I don't usually buy books off of podcasts, but I got right on Amazon. I got that book. I read it within a few days. And just from all of that, I connect with Lauree on Instagram and I was like, girlfriend, I need you on this podcast. And she was up for it. So I'm so pumped to get to chat with her today, get some insight into her business, her industry, her marketing strategy, and what makes it all tick. So, Lauree, are you ready to jump in?
Oh my gosh, ready.
All right, let's do this. Okay, so first of all, before we get into all levels of goodness, tell us about how you earn your living.
Yeah, so I've been a coach now for nearly 12 years and parlayed that over time into becoming a speaker and then an author and then an author again. And most recently, in addition to the coaching that I do one-on-one, I have added workshops, in-person retreats, and online masterminds for women entrepreneurs.
Ooh, wow. Okay. So hitting lots of different ways to work with you. That's interesting. Can you give us a little bit of information about what you coach your clients through? If I know it's a lot, but can you kind of tell us what you typically work with them on?
Yeah, sure. So actually, my clients have a lot in common. They are mainly women who are A students. So I liken A students to 3rd grade. 3rd grade was a really comfortable period of time in my life. And I think that's true for most of my clients as well. Like 3rd grade, there was a specific structure to it. You knew exactly what was required to get an A or a gold star. And we kind of thrive in knowing the structure that we're in. So real life doesn't always have those moments. I think that's why a good number of us like going to the dentist, because he or she can say like, oh, I can see you were flossing, right? Like, or we really like finishing a project because it's done, or getting some kind of grade, like, as you're climbing the corporate ladder, getting your yearly review. There's like, we thrive in having those kind of markers that we can aim for and know that we've achieved. So I tend to work with clients who kind of value that kind of structure and accountability that comes. And usually my business name is for a reason. It's Simply Leap. They're looking to make a leap. And a good number of them want to work for themselves or already work for themselves or want to do their careers differently. So we usually talk about career-related stuff and making choices that are good for them as opposed to making everyone else happy in their lives. So they can be kind of overwhelmed by all the things that they really like to do and not not being able to figure out which of them they should be focusing on for a career or a business. And they also can be worried about what everybody's going to think, or like if they're going to disappoint someone with a decision. So usually we cover that kind of stuff, like either worrying about what's going to happen or if they're going to get it right or what people are going to think, or not being able to choose or know they've made the quote unquote right choice for what they're going to do next.
Okay. Thanks for that rundown. All right. So now we need to go way, way back. I want it all, girlfriend. Tell us the story of how you came to do this with your life.
Yeah, we got to go way, way back. So I was climbing the corporate ladder, like a very good A student in my 20s. And I had a job in Manhattan and I had a fiance and I was climbing the corporate ladder doing media relations and marketing, making my parents very happy and proud of me. And I really got to the point where like I could keep doing this. I could keep making everyone else happy, but I know that this isn't right for me. I knew this corporate job wasn't the thing that I wanted to do, but I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And I had basically spent a weekend trying to figure out like, okay, how much money do I have in savings and how long can I go like out on my own to figure it out before I'm going to need to go back and find a job. And kind of had figured out my budget, was ready, made an appointment on Monday morning with my boss to have a conversation, and happened to have a doctor's appointment that morning because I had this ear infection that wouldn't go away. And really lucky that I had the first appointment being the doctor, because what I thought was an ear infection turned out to be a brain tumor.
Whoa.
And everything changed after that.
Whoa. Okay. All right. So keep going. That's like,
yeah,
it's just such a big moment. Okay. Keep going here.
Yeah. Well, it was, as you can imagine, it was a really big moment for me too. And I canceled the appointment with my boss after and went home and hid under the covers to try to figure out, okay, there was just so much that hit me at once. One is, boy, there are big things that we don't have control over. Like here, I thought I had control over my time and my money and where I was going to put my energy. And it's like, nope, I guess I don't have control over that. And there's way bigger things to worry about now than what I'm doing for a living. But on the other side of that, I mean, there was just so much that happened in the process of having operations and being in the hospital and, kind of facing the scariest thing that one can face. And on the other side of it, I realized, okay, so in the hospital, I had a couple moments where I realized how much power I did have. So one of the things that I talk about in my first book and also with my clients is that there are a lot of things that are out of our control. Our medical situation, that one is one of them. And sometimes it's our relationships or our job. There are things that can happen around us that really affect us. But no matter what is happening, including a brain tumor, no matter what is happening, you still have a lot of choices that you can do. And that was one of the biggest things that I learned. You get to choose how you feel about what's happening, what you do about it, how you talk about it, the words that you use, the people you surround yourself with, and how they repeat positive words back to you. And so one of the things that came out of that experience was being really thoughtful about okay, so I make these big important choices even from in a hospital room. And my health has been dramatically affected by the choices that I've made around how I think about what's possible, how I talk about it, the people I surround myself with. What if that learning from the hospital bed could be applied to every other part of my life? And what would be that possible then for my career and my relationships and the places where I lived and how I picked the next apartment that I lived in? And what would that mean to help other people recognize the power that they have? And actually from the hospital is when I decided that I wanted to be a coach and that I wanted to help people recognize and be really conscious of the choices that they're making around their career and their lives, to enjoy it as much as possible, and even in the toughest situations, and to not give away the power that is rightfully theirs. There are a lot of things we can't control, but a whole bunch we can give away if we're not aware of it. So that was the moment I decided. I left my job after that. When I got better, I, did a whole bunch of other things. I got married and then I got divorced and then I moved and then I sold all my belongings and I started traveling and I went to art school and I became a coach and I started a business and all these things. But really, it came from realizing how much power we have and knowing that I must have made it through that experience in order to do something important and worthwhile with my life, the life that I have. So I might as well use it. And I feel like telling this story is almost more important for me than whoever is listening, because it reminds me like, Lauree, you're here. You got to do it. You got to keep at it, because, this is the one chance. This is the chance that we have. What do you want to do with it?
Ooh, man, that was so well said. And I love podcasts. Everybody knows I love podcasts. The one thing that I don't like about podcasts is that sometimes it can summarize things that were really, really hard and make them feel like they were easy because you go through it in, a couple minutes. And I just want to take a second and just acknowledge that story that you just outlined for us is incredible, that you were able to sit in your hospital bed and think openly and intuitively about what that could mean for your life moving forward. That's not a perspective that I think a lot of people can find, especially in that situation. Huge stuff. And then you went through in quick succession of got married, got divorced, moved, sold all your stuff, went to art school. All those things were pivots in your journey. Yeah. And I think when we're living day to day and listening to our podcast, I don't know what our listeners are doing right now, in the shower or taking a jog or driving to work, a job that they hate or whatever it is, that they're in the trees right now and they feel buried by it. And the day to day is just hard and it feels like they're doing things wrong. And you just so eloquently and beautifully showed us that we're not doing anything wrong. We're living life. And as long as you're paying attention to those intuitive gut feelings and adjusting to them as you need to, you're doing it right. You're doing it. You are doing it. You are living this life. So thank you so much for outlining that for us. I would love to know, after the hospital bed and after I would assume you got better. I don't know what the diagnosis of that tumor was, but you're here with us now. So take us from hospital to life after that. And once you decided you wanted to be a coach, what did you do?
Yeah. So I'll answer the first question that you asked. Yeah, I am well now. And I'm so thankful for that. So luckily, there's so many unlucky things, but luckily my tumor was benign. It was big. So it took a bunch of surgeries, but it was benign. So once it's taken out and they do all checks and stuff for it, it should be, knock on wood, it should be fine. And I've been well since then. But after that, I did a couple things. One was because my background, as I said, is in media relations and marketing, I started working as a freelancer and a consultant with a virtual PR agency. So that way I had some steady income coming in while I was building my coaching business. I took a year-long coaching program that's still being hosted in Manhattan called Coaching for Transformation. And that program is now 9 months. But at the time, I was actually in the first class that they offered 12 years ago. And so in that class, I learned kind of the specifics of coaching and some of the skills. And I also recognized, and I think any coach listening will kind of understand this, one of the first things that you recognize in a coaching class is, one, there are a lot of people that are like you and, in the class, like kindred spirits. And two, that you have these natural skills that you didn't realize could apply to a career until you hear about coaching. It's like, oh, you mean when I listen to people and people like naturally gravitate to me to talk about real things, like there's a reason. And that's actually a skill that not everybody can do. And it's valuable, especially the coaching profession has blown up kind of since then. So we're used to the word coach in a way that we weren't before. So I went through this coaching program and I built my business on the side for 3 to 5 years and then went out on my own solely as a coach and, doing some in-person workshops, mostly coaching over the phone and clients across the country. And then a couple years into my business, I had this, I guess is an epiphany. I was riding on a bus between New York City and Washington, D.C., which was where I was living at the time. I don't know if anyone else has ridden on a bus through the state of New Jersey. It's a really long state and it gets really boring when I was staring out the window. And I just all of a sudden imagined myself on a stage talking. And I have been an introvert my whole life. And talking on a stage has not been something I've ever wanted to do. So I noticed that I'd had this vision of like, I'm talking on a stage. Wow. And what I was talking about was how my brain tumor can change your life. And I had never talked about my brain tumor in the years building my coaching business because I didn't want people to pity me. I didn't want people to feel bad about what had happened and the choices. I wanted people to see a thriving, healthy, successful person because I thought that that is what a successful business person looked like. I thought that that's what I needed in order to be successful. But in this moment, and hopefully this works for everybody, that like, there are kind of pivotal messages that come to you. And, not in the hospital bed was one of them. And on this bus ride was another one. And, sometimes we just have to recognize that we've gotten this message and then listen to it because I was like, oh, well, if I talk about my brain tumor, then actually I get people's attention. And then what do I want to do with that attention? Well, I want to empower them and help them notice how many choices that they really have. Like that was a way in to encouraging people and helping people with the choices that they're making. And then I realized that speaking wasn't as scary. It was still freaking scary, but it wasn't as scary because it was something I was really passionate about. And not long after that, I gave my first speech of now many. And then from the response from that first speech was where I got the idea for my first book that came a couple years after that. So I feel like even within the 12-year business that I've had, like it's kind of reinvented itself. So that's been kind of a really fun process to keep it interesting.
Man. So much goodness in that. And just overall, it's you side hustled this thing for 3 to 5 years because I think some people think that they're doing something, again, they're doing something wrong if they're side hustling for more than a couple months. It's like, no. Like,
oh my God, no way.
You give it the time that it needs. There's no timeline that you have to stick to. That's the beauty of it, right? And then you were coaching, you got this next message of, hey, I think I need to be on a stage. And so you followed that. And then you started writing books. So it's certainly a very cool evolution to see at least from my vantage point. I think it will be for others listening as well. Isn't it funny that I was definitely that typical A student, the girl raising her hand to the point where the teacher was like, Brit, we don't need your answer. Like, we know you know the answer. Let somebody else answer it, right? Or I had so many questions and it was like, I don't actually know the answer for you, Brit. So you're going to have to wait. Like, because I was just thinking and questioning everything. I totally get that. And isn't it funny that for A students, we tend to feel like we need to be ahead of the curve all the time. And sometimes that can really hurt us not only professionally and in our business, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually too. Once we get out into not only the real world of corporate, but also the real world of running your own business. Can you speak into that a little bit to us A students that want to be ahead of the curve and aren't really sure what to do now that we don't even know where the curve is? Like, where is this thing?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And you were kindred spirits, definitely. A students unite. And oh my gosh, this totally comes up in business in a couple different ways that I've seen. One is like the quote unquote, get it right. Like as if there's one right choice, my website needs to be perfect, or my social media needs to be perfect, or I have this one launch for this product or service, and I better get it right or else failure. And I think the or else ... is so frightening and intimidating to A students, because the beauty of third grade was that we knew we could get it right. The bar was set low enough where we would have no problem. The thing is that we've gone out on our own, or we've gone high enough on the ladder that we're climbing career-wise that we actually have chosen to do things that don't have a low bar anymore. We've chosen to take on new opportunities, things we've never done before, put ourselves out there in a way that maybe we haven't before. And so we can't apply the things that we held true in third grade when the bar was lower. Now is the moment where everything becomes research. You're going to just put it out there and try to figure it out and see what response is, and then do it again. In the beginning, I had several workshops that I canceled because I didn't fill them. because nobody responded or they wouldn't pay the rate or something fell through. And I really had to talk myself through like, this is not failure, because in my A student mind, you either get an A or you fail. Like B is just not even possible. So I had to talk myself through like, this is research. It doesn't mean that your business is failing or that nobody likes you. Like I literally had to talk myself through that. It doesn't mean that nobody likes you. You got to tweak it. You got to figure out a different way. Or you have to ask people. You have to ask people what they're working on, what they're challenged by, and then give them that. Or ask them what they value about you and then offer that. Like so much of what I learned was like trying to figure it out behind the scenes so that way nobody could see the rough drafts before it was out and perfect. And the rough drafts are usually way, way better to share early on and to get feedback and get buy-in and get people believing in it and people helping you design it. Because if clients help you design whatever the product or service is, they're going to be on board even more because they feel ownership. And so, so I feel like some of the A student stuff I've had to retell or rejigger, because being an A student is great because we're diligent and driven and we're willing to work. All those are good things, but it has to be perfect is a lie. It's actually a lie that we don't have to live in that story.
Right. And it's almost like if you're bumping up against that rub of, man, I don't know if I'm doing this right. And I feel like I'm doing it wrong. And then every once in a while I get a good sign that something's working. And then the next day there's like bad signs, whatever. It's almost like if that's happening to you and that's how you're perceiving it, you're probably on exactly the right path, because that shows you that you're no longer in a space where you're just floating by. You are, like you said, you're choosing to up level, you're choosing to go and make the standard higher. And therefore you're going to feel that rub. And that's a good thing. Yeah. That's a good thing. And I love how you also said that in the beginning, you would promote your workshops. They wouldn't fill or no one would pay, sign up, or there was a problem with the price. Like that's stuff that I know so many of our listeners are I'm dealing with it right now too. And it's so refreshing to hear you be like, yeah, like I canceled workshops because it just didn't work. And here I am. I'm like, it's okay. You keep tweaking. And it's not failure and it's not them not liking you. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like most of my message, as you know, is like, hugging. It's like very positive. And I think it's important for us to be real. And the reality is not social media. Like, and I fall prey to it too. Because as an A student, I like compare myself on social media. Like, oh my God, they have their graphics perfect. And they look like they're really killing it. And they like have all these clients and oh my God, they totally have it together. And you know what? They're just like the name of your podcast. They're like at home in yoga pants, figuring it out, sweating it out. Like we're all doing that. And,
every single one of us.
So it's kind of important to have both.
Yeah. So let's talk. I want to move over and talk about your books, mostly the most recent one, because I think it applies so incredibly to the business owner and just everything. So like I said in the beginning, I grabbed the book off of Amazon, downloaded it right away. I couldn't even wait for it to ship to me. I'm like, nope, I'm getting the ebook. I got to read this right now. And just like the A student I am, if there are questions at the end of the chapters, you guys, this is just like a life hack. If there are questions at the end of the chapter, you will get 80% more out of the book, maybe even more. Like, I don't even know how much. So much more out of the book if you just answer the question. So yeah, I answered every single question and it felt so good. So this book, it's called Simply Leap, 7 Lessons on Facing Fear and Enjoying the Crap Out of Your Life. Tell us about this book and why you decided to write it.
Yeah. So I love hearing people say the name because it's like the crap out of your life.
Yes.
Enjoy it. And there's like a giant cupcake on the cover, which is like with sparkles and sprinkles, and it's just awesome.
Oh yeah.
And the reason why this book came to be is because I had hit my 10-year anniversary, or I was coming up on my 10-year anniversary of my business. And I thought about the clients that I had worked with through the years, like the A students, the ones that like everyone has this, like if you're in business, there are people who kind of light up in your memory of like, oh my God, they were such a great client. And they were so like, they did all the homework, absolutely like what you're saying, answering all the questions. They were ready for every call and they so succeeded in their life. And I'm so utterly proud of them and grateful to even know them because I get so much energy and drive from them. So like these people are kind of lighting up in my memory through the years in business. And then I imagine them in the room together in a, because they're from around the country and some of them live in other countries as well. It's like, well, imagine if they were all in a room together. What would they talk about? What would they, what do they have in common? And the more I kind of imagine them in a room together, the more I realize that even though they kind of did different things, they were different places in their careers and relationships and whether they're having kids or not, there were all these decisions that they were making at the time. There were some things that they had in common. And the moment I imagined them in the room together, these 7 lessons came up like, oh, you know what? They all kind of went through a very similar process, each in their own way, but went through each of these 7 doors in the way that they did it. And once I had that, it took me a month to write the book. Like literally just sat down and I busted it out. And I was like, I knew exactly what I wanted to say because I had them in mind. Like, and there's stories or there's a story at least one per chapter to really walk you through not just what I think the lesson is, but how they made it their own. So that way you can really see yourself and see what it looks like in their stories and hopefully be inspired by them too. So I could picture them. It was like I was talking with them as I was writing and the words really flowed. So that's how that came to me.
That's so cool. And it feels so light, that story. It wasn't like, well, I wanted to write a book because I wanted to write a book and then it would be something that I could sell while I was on stage. And, because sometimes that's what people do.
Yeah,
but this was just, no, wait, like, let's think about this. I've worked with so many people and instead of trying to force curate these lessons, it was just being a listener to it, being an observer to it and giving words to what these people had gone through. And that gives words to someone else's story, which can be so, so powerful. I know, I gained so much from reading through the lessons. I think I gained even more from the pieces of the stories that you included in each chapter. Just like, oh, okay, this is what this looks like in real life. That was so, so helpful. And I so much enjoyed it from top to bottom. So we'll definitely, before we hop off, we'll definitely tell everybody where to go to get the book for sure. Take us through the last couple of years tell us when did this book go out and then what have you seen come, I see it here, 2016. So we're in 2018 now. Last couple of years, what has evolved, semi-directly or maybe indirectly from this book being in the world? What have you noticed?
That is such a good question, Brit. You're so good at this. Okay, so what has happened? It's been really fascinating. So yeah, the book came out in December 2016. And not long before that, I had actually moved so I lived in Manhattan when our story began. Then I moved to Washington, D.C. When I was in the full reinvention mode. And then when I published my first book, I had gone on a 6-month book tour that I had designed myself. And because I was like, oh, I'm a marketer, I know how to do this. And that is another story that if you have a lot of authors, man, I can tell you a lot about what I learned that way. But anyway, so I came back. I actually came back to my childhood home to see my parents. What was supposed to be 3 months in upstate New York in a small town in the Hudson Valley. And it was supposed to be 3 months after my book tour. And that has turned into, I've now been here for 3.5 years, almost 4 years. And so what happened in that time between, so I wrote and published the book while I was here. And kind of since being here, the reason why I'm still living in the Hudson Valley is that I realized kind of the next iteration of my business and my work. And when I say work, it's kind of like the inside kind of what you're drawn to. And what I realized in the last couple of years was that I really love being around women business owners, that I believe women do business differently. We approach our work. We bring our full selves to our work, no matter whether it's in an organization or in our home. We don't compartmentalize usually. We're also natural communicators and collaborators. We're always looking for connections. We want to help other people, even if they're doing the same kind of work we are. And we're also really natural cheerleaders. I think there's so much much about how women approach business differently that excites me. And when I moved back to the Hudson Valley, I was like already working for myself and I needed to meet other people. And I met a couple other women business owners that were local. And I was like, oh, we should get together regularly. This would be so great. And apparently it was really needed in this area because this group has just grown. I now run an organization, a local organization called Hudson Valley Women in Business. And if you're in upstate New York and you'd like to join, you're very welcome. But that really has parlayed into, I do online masterminds for women business owners, very similar to what I do in person here. And because there's something powerful when we get in a room together, even a virtual one. And I feel like that has been kind of the new iteration of my book. And actually, the book was the reason for it. So these 7 lessons are really powerful, as you said, kind of walking through and hearing these other stories. And so even more powerful when you get to talk about each of these lessons with other people. So I actually host what's called Career Clarity and Community, which is an online kind of mastermind for like an intimate group of women to follow week to week through each of the lessons and in support of one another with that kind of accountability where we kind of do it together and I'm there facilitating it. And it's like that has been such an interesting progression from that last book launch. That community is now something that I'm really drawn to building in addition to like the one work that I do.
That's cool. That's really cool. And it's not anything that it sounds like it wasn't anything that you expected at all. It just, you were open-handed enough to publish the book. And then you kept your hands open to what that can then mean for these other women and continued to serve. I admire that big time. So that's very interesting. Okay, so we're going to land the plane here. I want to, of course, ask our one last question. I wonder, looking back, what advice would you give to yourself when you were first starting your business? That girl on her couch, hunched over her MacBook, trying to figure all of this out. What would you say to her?
It's actually the same advice I would give myself today, which is pick one thing and keep doing it over and over and over again, whether it's blogging or podcasting or hosting workshops or doing a Facebook Live. Like, pick one thing. It doesn't have to be right. You don't have to know where it leads, but like keep doing it. And you need to do it for like 6 months at least to know if it was worthwhile.
Yeah.
And I feel like so much opens up when our customers and clients know they can count on something from us. And there's something that comes from me knowing that I can stick with something long enough. They're like, oh, I can do something consistently for 6 months or a year or 2 years. And I feel like if I just, even when I was starting out, like just try something and stick with it for a while and see what happens and use it as research, that it just so many doors open from that.
I feel like I need that tattooed on my forehead, to be completely honest, because I tend to be a little squirrely. I tend to be idea, put it out there, ship it. Okay, kind of worked. Let me find something else. And not all the time, but that does tend to be my natural lean. So that was good foundation. And I know that there are a couple women that listen to this podcast that are also in my close network that are going to be like, yes, Brittany, listen to her. Please listen to her. So, that was a really, really good advice. Okay. So before we go here, could you please tell the listeners where they can find you online and also your book, Simply Leap?
Sure. So I am pretty active online. So my website is simplyleap.com, and you can find out about Career Clarity, that group that I was talking about, the online mastermind, and then also my books are both on Simply Leap and pretty easy to find. You can also learn about my hug tour. We didn't get to talk much about hugs, but there's like a whole hug wall of photos of people hugging, and it's so awesome. And then you can also find me on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter at Simply Leap.
So easy. Awesome. We will definitely link to all of that in the show notes. So here we go. You heard her, girls. Go check her out, send her some love, and then hop into our private Facebook group to hear even more from Lauree over the next few days. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Keep the conversation going by visiting marketingin.yogapants.com/Facebook, where you'll get to join that private Facebook group I've been talking so much about. There, you'll get to chat with our podcast guests Yeah, they're in there too. And all of the other brilliant creative business owners. We're connecting, we're meeting our soul sisters, and we're building our businesses, all while in yoga pants. So come hang out with us. Again, visit marketinginyogapants.com/Facebook to get in. And one more thing. If you dig this podcast, would you be awesome and share it with someone? This entire Marketing in Yoga Pants movement is nothing without its community. So please share. And if you're really feeling the love right now, jump into iTunes. You're probably already there if you're listening to this right now. And leave us a rating and review. The more of those we rack up, the more the podcast will be found by ladies like you, and the stronger this community becomes. This episode was edited and produced by the Podcast Engineers. They're pretty great, so go find them at podcastengineers.com. This episode was also brought to you by my online marketing agency, Jam Marketing Group, and you can find us at jammarketinggroup.co. That's all for now. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you back here next week on the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Love ya. Bye.